All right, let's talk about a really fundamental but honestly sometimes confusing part of AWS security, network access control lists. You'll probably hear them called NACLs for short. So if you've ever wondered how to set up that very first line of defense for all your stuff in the cloud, you are in exactly the right place.
So I want you to imagine something. Think of your cloud setup not as just one single house, but as a whole neighborhood. Now, how would you go about securing that? You probably wouldn't put a security guard at every single person's front door, right? No, you'd put one big guard at the main entrance to the entire neighborhood. And that is exactly the problem a network ACL is built to solve.
And that's really the core idea here. A network ACL, or NACL, is that security guard. It stands right at the entrance of your cloud neighborhood. And in AWS speak, that neighborhood is called a subnet. Its entire job is to check every bit of traffic and decide right then and there, are you allowed in or are you allowed out?
Okay, first up, let's get to know our security guard a little better. Because to use it the right way, you've got to understand its jurisdiction. Exactly where it operates and what it can and can't do.
So this is the most important thing to get. A NACL is a firewall that works at the subnet level. It's not attached to your individual EC2 instances, your servers, or your databases. Nope. It's attached to the entire subnet, and it protects everything inside by only checking traffic as it crosses that boundary, either coming in or going out. So if two servers are just chatting with each other inside the same subnet, the NACL is totally oblivious. It doesn't even see that traffic. So how does our guard make these quick decisions? Well, it's not just a gut feeling. It follows a very, very specific rulebook. Let's take a look at how that rulebook is actually put together.
The rulebook is actually split into two different lists. It's really simple. There's one list of rules just for inbound traffic. That's anything trying to get into the subnet. And then there's a totally separate list just for outbound traffic, anything trying to leave. And this is what that rulebook kind of looks like in real life. It's just a simple table with a few really important columns. You've got a rule number, the type of traffic it applies to, where it's coming from, and then, of course, the big decision, allow or deny. This structure is the key to everything.
And the way the guard reads these rules is so important. It always starts with the lowest rule number, maybe rule 100, and it checks if the traffic matches that rule. If it does, boom, that rule gets applied, whether it's allow or deny, and the process stops cold. The guard doesn't even look at any of the other rules. The first match wins, period.
Now this brings us to a huge concept, one that trips people up all the time. NACLs are stateless. Think about it this way. Our security guard has zero memory. Just because they let someone in a second ago doesn't mean they'll remember them to let them back out. You have to have a totally separate explicit rule on the outbound list to allow that return traffic. That's right, two separate rules for just one conversation.
Okay, so if you've been working with AWS for a little while, you might be thinking, hang on a second, this sounds a lot like a security group. And you know what? That is the most common point of confusion, so let's clear that up right now.
The differences really boil down to three main things. First, their scope. An ACL is the neighborhood guard for the whole subnet, but a security group is like a personal bodyguard for a single server or instance. Second, memory. NACLs are stateless, they forget traffic instantly. Security groups are stateful, they remember connections. And finally, the rules themselves. NACLs can have both allow and deny rules, which is super powerful. Security groups, they can only have allow rules.
Okay, that's enough theory. Let's see how you'd actually use one of these things in a real-world situation.
So what's the killer use case, right? When do you actually reach for a NACL instead of just using a security group?
It is this, right here. The most common and, frankly, most powerful use for a NAC is to block a specific, known bad IP address. Because it works at the subnet level, you can create one single deny rule, and just like that, you've blocked that malicious actor from reaching any of your resources in that whole neighborhood. It's a big, broad, powerful hammer.
This scenario just sums it up perfectly. You've got some bad IP address trying to attack your entire subnet. A NACL is your best friend. You write one rule to deny that IP at the subnet's entrance, and everything inside is protected. It's efficient, it's effective, and it's really the main reason NACLs are there.
All right, we have covered a lot of ground, so let's boil this all down into a final, super fast cheat sheet that you can take with you.
Okay, here are the things you absolutely have to remember. First, a NACL is your subnet's gateway security.
Second, it's stateless, which means you always need rules for both inbound and outbound traffic. Third, the first rule that matches is the only one that counts. And finally, remember that the default NACL AWS gives you allows everything. But if you go and make a custom one, it starts by denying everything until you add your own rules.
And that's our deep dive into network ACLs. You see, they're a pretty simple but an incredibly powerful layer of defense. So the only real question left is, now that you know the rules of the game, how are you going to secure your subnet?